John Fitzgerald.
Can you stand up?
Yeah, love to stand up. Actually, I wanted to stand up. Am I 3 minutes now? Sure. Please get my brochure if you could also. Right off the top, I want you to know the reason I'm running is because I'm a painting contractor, okay? And I really feel that the Republicans and the Democrats aren't serving us well right now. And that goes for Mr. Miller. I voted for Mr. Miller my entire life, as did my family. I diehard Democrat, as did everybody in my family. But I see what's going on in this country right now. And when George Bush was in office, we saw unconstitutional wars. And they're still going on today. We saw surveillance, the Patriot Act, Homeland Security. And President Obama said he's going to stop these wars, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. We have rendition under George Bush. It's still going on today. In fact, the wars are continuing and we're advancing into new wars. And we have a drumbeat right now towards Iran, Syria. We're in overt wars, covert wars. We have drones by the year 2015, 30,000 that have just been okayed throughout America. It's an Orwellian state we're living in right now. And that's why I'm running. Mr. Miller is not speaking to those issues. Mr. Garamendi has spoken about some of these issues, but I've never heard Mr. Miller say a word about it. And the reason I first decided to run, I was approached actually by several people, is because I found out that Mr. Miller killed single-payer health care. He was one of its chief signatories of John Connor's bill off of Dennis Kucinich's bill, H.R. 676. He killed it in committee. He took the rights of each state to vote independently of the federal government for what they wanted as far as health care. That got me very upset. And that's why I'm here today. And I really appreciate what Scott, sent me this invitation to speak before you. We have a National Defense Authorization Act that President Obama signed, whereby you and I can be rounded up right now, accused of being a terrorist. He's a constitutional attorney, President Obama. It's completely against the Constitution. No due process, no representation of your peers, and held indefinitely for life. That's not the country that I was raised in, but my children. What is their future going to be? What are our grandchildren's future going to be if we, as citizens of the United States, and as citizens in our community, don't stand up to do something and say, stop, this is enough.
Right.
That's why I'm running. I care so deeply for this country, and so does Mr. Miller. But I hear him speak about some of these issues, but what's he doing to pass legislation to stop it? I will get in there and I will do something about getting legislation passed. That's all I care about. I care about our children's future. I care about you, in my future, in our country's future. Thank you very much. Please take a look at my brochure. Please do. Thank you.
Continuing our alphabetical series, George Miller, speaking on his behalf, Dave Johnson.
Thank you. I'm here because George is in Washington. He's down in session, so I'm going to read a letter from him. Probably not with the passion he will get, but I will read it.
Can you speak loud? I don't need notes for the news.
I'll do the best I can. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about why I'm running for re-election. I'm sorry I can't be here in person, but Congress is in session today. First of all, thank you for being part of El Cerrito Democrats. Local democratic clubs are such an important part of grassroots democratic society, helping to keep our community informed, engaged, and giving you a voice on important issues. Secondly, I'm very excited at the prospect of representing El Cerrito again in Congress. I've always appreciated how engaged this community is, and have always enjoyed interacting with you on a range of issues. I look forward to doing that again on a regular basis. Now getting to the heart of the matter, why I'm running. I'm running for re-election to reignite the American dream. Now, we've got a lot of work to do to grow the economy, help small business owners and entrepreneurs create good jobs, protect the environment, invest in transportation and infrastructure, and improve our schools. I'm a lifelong Pentecostal with a record of integrity and success. I've written bills signed into law by presidents of both parties to protect California water, expand water recycling and the jobs that come with it, raise the minimum wage, and improve the nutrition meals served in public schools, and reduce the cost of student loans. I co-wrote the Affordable Health Care Act that is guaranteeing children, seniors, and every American access to affordable health care. And I wrote the first law that Barack Obama signed when he became president, the Lilly Ledbetter Act, which strengthens protections for women against paid discrimination. As top Democrat in the Education and Workforce Committee, I wake up every day to go to work on behalf of America's workers, school children, retirees, and a healthy environment. I never give up fighting for every American of every race, color, religion, sexual identity, and economic position to have the opportunity to succeed in life if they're working hard and taking responsibility. The dream can be ours again. Got a lot of work to do. I have integrity. I take seriously the solemn oath of elected officials to represent our constituents, protect our country, and to be held accountable for our actions. So I'm asking for your endorsement. Now, some things he wanted me to share with you about what's going on in Washington. College loans. He says, when I was chairman of the Ed Committee, we passed a law that I helped write to help make college more affordable. One of the steps was to law that lowered student loan interest rates for Stafford loans from 6.8 to 3.4. That's now about to expire because Republicans won't let it go. Okay, I got to quit. I also brought some things for you to look at, so if you want to take a yard sign and a bumper sticker, that would be great.
Okay. And our third candidate, Cheryl Sutter.
I'm actually going to turn around. It's Cheryl Sutter, and it was a difficult decision to decide to run for office. I spent a lot of time over my lifetime doing a lot of things in local politics, in the school districts, and with advocacy for people with disabilities and wounded warriors. I've been to DC probably half a dozen times in the last few years, probably 18 times altogether. I've made several attempts the last few years when I get to DC to meet with congressmen for our area. I lived in El Cerrito for 12 years. I currently live in El Sobrani. I grew up in the Midwest, where in Missouri, it's not necessarily your skin color or your ethnicity. It's a work ethic. It's you say what you mean and you mean what you say. It's when it's time to groom the next generation, you take that as your charge. I listened to your commentary about Prop 28, totally changed my speech tonight, because I thought about it. Everybody tells us as young people, we need to step forward. You need to take the reins. You need to lead into the next generation. We cannot become leaders. We cannot change this country and make it better if we are not given the opportunity to come forward. As long as you have career politicians, as long as you have people who've been in office almost as long as I've been living, and there is no change, you will continue to have the same type of bickering, this same type of lack of integrity and decorum in Washington. I don't care about Republican or Democrat or anything else. I care about people. I care about people who have integrity, people who say what they're going to do. I care about people who know that my body belongs to me. So when you tell me that you want eminent domain over land, that's one thing. But if you want eminent domain over my person, that's a different thing. If we've outlawed slavery, we should be outlawing that. It's great that we're fighting for the Lilly Ledbetter Act, but how about we concentrate on making sure that we have equal rights and equal opportunity and equal access to all that this country offers to every single person. Not just a privileged few. That we all abide by what we say. A lot of people throw around religion. Well, most religions I know say that there's a spirit of charity. There's a spirit of helping. There's a spirit of lifting people up. There's a spirit of taking care of our elderly and our young people. And that is where we need to come from. We have to have a new voice. We didn't get in this hole automatically overnight. We got in this hole one legislator, one senator, and one president at a time. And that's the way you have to take it back. One legislator, one senator, and one president at a time. And I would appreciate yours. Thank you.
cards. Start over around.
Any other questions? I got a card here. Well, thank you all for coming this evening and talking on behalf of yourselves or your representatives.
Thank you.
And I do have a handful of questions here. I'm going to start with one that may be of interest to all of us. Microsoft and Facebook recently spent hundreds of millions buying patents. Is it time for patent reform, and what would you do? And we'll go back in reverse order if we could, so you could start. Would be great.
I actually spent almost 10 years doing intellectual property contracts. And I believe that there's a need for some patent reform. I do believe that intellectual property deserves to be protected by people who formulate the ideas. Where I disagree is when you are allowed to take the knowledge of a company or an idea from one company and take that information into a competitor or form a competitive venture. Then you distort the marketplace. The big companies like Microsoft and Facebook, while they are more prominently known for patent protection also helps little companies and little businesses and mom-and-pop organizations and those of us who write papers or journalists or bloggers for them.
Scott, you can sit. So we're giving you a short time to respond to these, so Scott's still taking time on these. So Dave, you want me to repeat the question?
No, that's not necessary. It's hard for me to speak for George on most policy issues. I do campaigning work. So I'm going to have to defer on this. I know that the issue of patents is important to George, but quite frankly, I don't know what his position is on.
So you can always take these times to tell us about things that George is doing. So you do have this equal amount of time, so you can certainly take these times to tell us about some of the things that George is doing. So at least if you aren't answering the question, you at least help him.
That's good. I would like to speak to the Affordable Health Care Act. Now, George supported single payer, but he understood that pushing single payer wasn't going to pass. There weren't the votes. And what was important was producing a bill that advances to some national health care that everybody was covered. I think he sees policy making and legislating as getting into a room, working with all parties involved, and working out a deal. And pushing single payer wasn't going to work. There weren't the votes for it.
If I may ask, the patent question, it's an important issue, but being that he just spoke to the healthcare issue, I have to say, if you have an idea, you came up with an idea, you should be able to have that patent for that idea. I could get into a lot of information about Microsoft and what they're doing with Facebook in other aspects, surveilling us. So I'm not very happy with Facebook or Microsoft for the most part, to be quite honest with you. But that's for another time. But if you design something, it's your idea, then you should have the right to that patent. I agree with that. If you look at Microsoft, Bill Gates actually took a lot of ideas from other companies. So you got to look directly at Bill Gates and say he wasn't very ethical in a lot of ways. As far as the healthcare issue, the problem I have with Mr. Miller is when he goes out and speaks, and I've been to many of his speeches, he talks about how he really wanted single-payer health care, but he doesn't tell the people that he actually didn't fight as hard as he could have, and he killed it in committee. That's the problem I have. At least admit that you were the chief signatory who killed it in committee. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to actually start with Dave this time on this question. And what I'm going to ask about is, let me go back to this one. Yeah. We will talk about education legislation. And you may not be able to answer this, but hopefully there's something you can talk about the education legislation. The specific question was, and everyone will have an opportunity to answer this, do you believe that the education legislation that George backed with George Bush, No Child Left Behind, has come close to achieving its objective.
I think what George would say is that it needs to be rewritten, and that's something that he's been trying to do. But the real value in No Child Left Behind was that it exposed kind of where the problems were at the education systems around the country. Where that act failed was that there was supposed to be more that followed, that didn't follow because we wound up going to war in Afghanistan and then Iraq. I know George, who is ranking member of the Education and Labor Committee, is waiting for the Republicans to work with him to reauthorize No Child Left Behind in a way that will give more flexibility to states, in particular, in designing evaluation and accountability systems so that you don't just work to the test once a year. That today you'll know what you need to do tomorrow to work with a child.
John?
Okay, very simply, unmitigated disaster, no child left behind. Once again, Mr. Miller, when we get into the wars later on another issue, stop the wars, we have trillions of dollars we bring back for educational purposes. When you look at No Child Left Behind, once again, he's the chief signatory, as we know. We're rated 19 out of 19 industrialized nations in education. I mean, that's remarkable, to say the least. And now Mr. Miller is going towards funding charter schools, which takes money directly away from the public school system. Why reinvent the wheel? Why don't we just put the money where it should be? And the fact is, there is a lot of money going to education. I have friends that are teachers and I have family that are teachers. But it's not going where it should be going, to the students and the teachers to teach. It's just going to teach you to the test. Memorization, that's not education. So let's bring it back to the teachers, allow them to think outside the box and have a system where they can actually do so and not be so regulated in the classroom. Thank you.
Cheryl?
No child left behind. I have 3 children, and fortunately none of them have been left behind. Only because I've had to spend the extra money, resources, and time to ensure that that doesn't happen. They're all students in the Albany School District, and we have to spend extra money on where we live to ensure that our children have an adequate education. That's where this has failed us. It's failed us because if you live in the lower ends of Richmond, if you live in the flatlands, you are not going to get that type of education. The teachers should not be able to choose where they teach. You become a teacher because you want that challenge. You want to open those eyes. You want to see that brightness. You want to spark something in these children. Not because you want to get an API score that's higher than anybody else's. When I came to California, it was one of the best educational places in the country. Now it's one of the worst. And it will continue to be as long as we wait for somebody to agree with us in order to pass a bill.
Great, thank you. This next round, I'm going to cut the time down. Was that 1 minute?
No.
Yeah, these will be 30-second questions because they're actually targeted to individuals. So, John, what has been your past political involvement?
Well, actually, political involvement, I haven't had any political involvement except for being an astute observer of politics in college and elsewhere. I worked with children in probation as a mentor for about 3 years with my wife, and I worked with the elementary school where my kids attend on the side council for funding.
Great.
In a nutshell.
Thanks. Dave, did George Miller oppose the Patriot Act?
Yes.
Opposed to which act?
Patriot Act. Did he oppose the Patriot Act?
He opposed the Patriot Act.
Okay.
Did he vote against it?
Yes.
Okay. And Cheryl, if I'm going to ask the same question, what has been your past political involvement?
I worked on the Danforth campaign when I was just 8 years old in Missouri, and I've been involved in politics ever since then. I was very proud to cast my first vote back in 1987, when I became of age to do so. My son will be of age this year to vote for me. And I've worked on the Obama campaign, the both Clinton campaigns. I've worked on Carter's campaign. I've been involved in Young Democrats when I was in college, and now I'm a mentor for a lot of Young Democrats. And I mentor young girls from the ages of 8 to 18.
Great, thank you. Back to a minute. Cheryl, starting with you. If you're elected, what is the most important thing you want to do?
If I'm elected, the most important thing is to restore decorum, restore the feeling that we don't have to be disagreeable to disagree, to realize that we should be all people of integrity, intelligence, and wherewithal, and be able to sit down and come to an agreement without destroying each other individually. One of the biggest issues that I have is that people pick at things that we may have different, when in actuality, 98% of what we have is very similar. I want to make sure that women's rights are restored and that children get a fair, equal opportunity to have education in a broad sense, not geared towards any type of testing or any type of specified field. As well, healthcare is very, very important, especially for our wounded warriors and our women who are returning as wounded warriors.
Dave, as his campaign manager, hopefully you know what, if he's elected, what's the most important thing Congressman Miller would want to do?
I think what he would say is that the most important thing is to get our economy running. So to create jobs, whether people can buy homes again. And when these things happen, all kinds of other good things happen. We'll have more revenue for schools, for social services, for healthcare, and all of those things.
So,
Stop the wars. Defund the ability for us to go to war. Audit the Federal Reserve. It's a privately owned bank. The Constitution mandates that the Treasury authorize the issuance of our currency and have oversight over it. We haven't had that since 1913. We have a cabal running our monetary system. And anybody who looks into this honestly and open-mindedly will find that out very quickly. I have documentary after documentary to prove it's true. Literature after piece of literature proving it's true. Who fought and who still fights against it? Bernie Sanders, Dennis Kucinich, Ron Paul, Alan Grayson. He got booted after his first term. He's fighting to get back in there. Cynthia McKinney lost her job also. That's the snake. That's the serpent with the head that needs to be cut off. They attach interest to all the money they're printing, the bankers, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. Been doing it for hundreds of years, but since the Federal Reserve was implemented in 1913, they've caused every economic downturn we have. You cut that head off that monster, you're going to see your communities flourish. And go with community banks. It stays in circulation 3 times longer than the international banking system. It's a fact.
time. Starting with John, yes, or right? No, sorry. Cheryl, you started that question, right? Okay, so it would be with
I
Dave.
can start all over.
You wanted to. Can you tell me about Congressman's position on the death penalty?
Congressman Miller opposes the death penalty.
John?
I oppose the death penalty for one very important reason. It's wrong, first off. Another reason is, if there's one innocent person being put to death, abolish it. DNA has proven, I think it was in Illinois, they proved that several people that were on death row were innocent through DNA analysis. And George Walker Bush, whatever, George Jr., he opposed it. And it turns out there are a lot of people on death row in Texas that were innocent. So I oppose it.
Sure.
I live my life so that I don't judge other people. And I believe that when you are judging when a person lives or dies, you are taking a role of superiority that we are not entitled to.
That's a no.
No. That's a strong no.
And starting with John, what is the proper role for NATO today?
To be quite honest with you, NATO has no right to tell us what to do in my eyes. If you look at what's going on right now, in the congressional hearing just about 2 weeks ago, it was stated in the congressional hearing that NATO and the UN can make decisions over Congress. You can Google it, it's on C-SPAN. That's totally unconstitutional, as we all know. They have no right to tell us what to do. They shouldn't be policing the world. Congress should determine what we're going to do around the world. And the fact is, we should decide who goes into Congress to make those decisions in a proper way for our people. 90% of the people that are being killed across this world, and nation building is what we're doing, and stealing resources is what we're doing. They always seem to have something we want. 90% of the people that we're killing are innocent people, women and children and men, who had nothing to do with anything. Our soldiers are dying. For what reason? They're coming back with brain injuries. $37 million per soldier who comes back with a brain injury. We got to stop this. This is nonsense. NATO, UN, Congress makes that determination.
Time.
Thank you.
Cheryl, yeah.
Well, I agree we should be making determination from a national standpoint. I disagree that there's no value in NATO. I go back to one word, it's integrity. When you make an agreement, you stand by an agreement. It's called a treaty for a reason. And when many nations agree to act in a certain fashion, you have to have someone who is watching to hold everybody accountable. I believe that our Congress is the ones who have dropped the ball. We are the ones who have not seen the worth and grabbed the most value out of NATO and the UN. There's some intrinsic value in ensuring that the world in and of itself, not just the United States, is in a peaceful state.
I think George would say that there is a role for the UN, and we should be an important part of it. We should be part of the leadership of NATO. I think this idea that NATO can tell Congress what to do is incorrect. Congress makes decisions on behalf of our country and is not beholden to others and doesn't follow the orders of the militaries of other countries.
Can we refute anything? Just quickly. Don Cerrito was in just last week in Congress, was asked by Congress about that very issue, and he literally stated UN and NATO and UN can make that decision. And Sessions, who I don't like for the most part, across the board, said, "Sir, you're saying that Congress has no oversight, that the UN and NATO have more say-so in what we're doing abroad than Congress."
Let's
I mean,
follow the
that's just
process,
wrong.
and you
Okay.
can refute afterwards.
Okay, that's fine.
On an individual.
There's closing remarks, is that correct?
We could do 1 minute closing.
Okay, thank you.
On the Healthcare Act, let's see, we'll start with Cheryl. On the Healthcare Act, do you want to make any comments about the current Healthcare Act and where the current legislation is on Healthcare Act?
One of the biggest disappointments and headaches that I find as a Democrat is that we don't have a Congress with the type of backbone that will stand up and respond when such a worthy effort has been put forth to make sure we have quality, affordable health care for everybody in this country. We have Democrats who are willing to sit back and let Republicans put us in a corner and paint a picture for the citizens of what they call it Obamacare, instead of calling it a healthcare system that's affordable and accessible to all people. Instead of us taking the lead and ensuring that people are wisely informed of what the healthcare issues are and what their payments will be. People have earned the right at a certain age to be taken care of.
Dave?
Of course, George was one of the authors of the Affordable Health Care Act. And I spoke to a couple of the things he a bit ago. I think we're already seeing some of the effects of it in the fact that young people can stay on their parents' insurance longer. You can't deny insurance coverage because of pre-existing conditions. And there are other parts that are about to kick in, assuming the Supreme Court finds it unconstitutional. Right now, Republicans have Medicare under attack, and in the budget, they want to completely change Medicare and undo the guarantee that we've had for more than 40 years now. I think it's doing what it's supposed to. In 2014, everybody should be on health care. It should bring down costs, and health care should be better.
Okay, John?
Well, I believe that we all should have health care, no doubt about it, but I also believe that the state should have the rights to get the health care that they want and work with doctors and work with insurance companies to give it actual competitiveness. If there's competition, I think the cost would come down. The Health Care Act that we have under President Obama, to me, honestly, it's going to cost us far more money. Everything I looked at, a lot of people are saying it's going to cost $17 trillion more than they said it was going to cost over a period of 10 to 15 years. I look at the educational system, as I said, nationally, it's been a disaster. So who says that the health care nationally being run by our government is going to be any better? Why not let the states decide, let the doctors and the cities and the counties work together to get us the health care that we really deserve to keep the cost down? The pharmaceutical companies are a big part of this problem. They've been co-opted. And I wish I could get into a lot of this stuff, but I can't. But individually I can to show you what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. Last question, bring it back closer to the home. A state issue, the compromise millionaires tax and the initiative, tax initiative, or Governor Brown's initiative with regards to raising local revenues in the state of California. We're interested in hearing what you would do or how you support that initiative. So in your words, if you could give us some thoughts on the Compromise Millionaires Tax Initiative or Governor Brown's initiative.
And I've not yet heard George take a position on the state initiative, but I have heard him talk about the unfairness in our tax code. And he believes that we need to change the tax code so it's fairer for everybody. Especially the millionaires and billionaires need to pay their fair share of taxes. And I know that's something that he's worked on and been working on for most of his career, is fairness in the tax code.
Me? Okay. Actually, I read the bill the other day, the President Brown is putting forward. And why is it called the millionaire's tax? It says $250,000 or more. $250,000, you're not a millionaire. I have a small business. The revenue of my business used to be about $250 to $300. That doesn't mean I make that. And you put it back into your business. And if you look at the amount of people that get jobs and economies, they're getting them from the small business people. I have no problem taxing multi-millionaires. But when you're taxing people that are making $1 million or less, in my eyes, and I have friends that make that, I don't make nearly that. But they're not living high on the hog. And they're putting, as I said, they're small business owners. And they're putting a lot of it into their communities and into their businesses to actually create more jobs. So I'm not for it. And I think it's disingenuous, not you, but for the bill to state the millionaire's tax. $250,000 a year is not a millionaire. Thank you.
Again, I grew up where everybody does their fair share. And your fair share might not be the same as my fair share. I believe that, if any of you tithe, you know that can mean different things to every different person. Because it's based on what you can afford and what you bring to it. I believe that everybody has to contribute back to society. Yes, there should be some breaks for small business, but there should not be a case where we have large corporations like Chevron in our particular district that say nothing. And we say that's because they're providing jobs. Because many of the jobs they're providing are not in our local area. I don't see them scouring the streets of Richmond, training any of those young men or women to come to work at Chevron. So everybody needs to pay their fair share.
Great, thank you. And we'll do closing statements. Which order do you want to go in?
Let's go in reverse of the opening. So we'll start with Cheryl Sawyer. 60 seconds.
60 seconds. So, in essence, the reason that I am running for a U.S. Rep for District 11 is so that we have a creative voice in D.C., someone who has experience in reaching resolution, where no one walks away from the table feeling as if they've lost. I've been negotiating contracts and contract law since 1992, and it's a passion of mine. I deal with people with disabilities on an everyday basis as part of the Ability One program. I travel around and I speak and train individuals on how to mitigate issues, how the problems are. And what we've lost in DC right now is that ability to speak to each other with decorum and with professionalism and not treat each person as an enemy based on the initial R, D, or I behind one's name. I ask for your support and I appreciate your attention.
First of all, forgive me for not being the dynamic speaker that George is, but I think many of you know George. You know that he has a lot of experience, and he has been very successful. He's one of the most successful legislators in the history of Congress, and he's done it by working with Republican partners. Right now, they don't have partners. And he would tell you, this is, the Republicans, especially Tea Party Republicans, see compromise as capitulation. So what's important in this election is to regain control of the House. 25 seats is all it takes. And it starts with supporting George, and he's supporting candidates in other races to take back the House. Again, he's a man of integrity. I think many of you know him. He's home just about every weekend. He's engaged with the community. He's involved in the community. He cares about the community. Children and families has been what's most important to him in his 30 years of Congress. So please support him.
In closing, I'd just like to say that all I care about, as I said when I introduced myself, our children's future. And our children's future shouldn't be the chance they're going to go off to a foreign land for a war, an unjust war. When you look at the bailouts that George Bush started and President Obama signed, and you find out that $150 billion was given to the banks. This isn't insurance, this isn't the auto manufacturers, just for the banking system. $150 billion was given in bonuses in 2008, and all 50 states combined were $148 billion in debt. And somehow they forgot to put a stipulation in there that no bonus would be given out. In a free market system that people say works, I don't get bailed out when my business is down about 60 to 70%. I'm not asking for anybody to give me anything. I work hard, and a lot of us here do. Most people I know do. And we're trying to put food on the table. We're choosing between putting heating for the elderly in the Midwest and the East Coast right now, or food on the table. They have to pick and choose between their medications. That's wrong. And when you look at what's going on with the pharmaceutical companies, as I alluded to earlier, they're taking advantage of all of us. And a lot of the agencies that are supposed to work for us have been co-opted. Please just take a look at what I'm running on, and I'll back up everything, no conjecture. I'll show you all the facts. It's true. Thank you. I hope to earn your vote.